It's Rockin' and Rappin', a podcast with a purpose. I'm Chris Cooper here with Alex and Flizzo. Last week, we learned the masks we wear write our history. While I have you, let me know what you think of this. Compartmentalize the part I memorized, the soul flowed, sold low, told slow. Let me spell it out. WRECKING and RAPPING. This ain't your plain Jane insane. I'm the lion's main man, a bejeweled fool. And the band's been paid to say she shells, but oh well, she should surely show me, shout out my favorite stars and those that help me out in times of doubt. Okay. How would you describe that? Reckon you're rapping, you must choose one.
I'm going with rapping.
I'm gonna go with wrecking.
Mm-hmm.
I do appreciate the Method Man influence, though.
Oh, a Method Man influence. That's exciting to hear. Shout out to Mr. Meth. Move it on your left.
Sure.
That's great to hear.
Man, so.
Meth's a legend. I am excited to get a wrecking out of Alex without having to pull a Gallagher. That was my intended stunt, but now I can suppose I can go on.
What were you gonna
smash some fruit, maybe a banana or a strawberry. But what I find interesting is that when I first thought up this concept, I thought you guys would contextualize wrecking, meaning I screwed up, and rapping was like a successful song. So It's just interesting how, with art especially, that you don't know how people are going to take it.
I used to be all about someone messed up rapping though. Like, isn't it just words in the flow?
Well, if the flow lacks sincerity.
Oh, you can mess up rapping.
Yeah. Let's see. 1, 2, 3 to the 4. Here we go. Hit the door. How's that for a wrecked rap?
All right, so we're going wrecking means you wrecked it.
It means whatever you guys want it to mean. I just think it's funny or interesting how many different ways it can go. I mean, that's why I just like the name of the show to say it's Rockin' and Rappin'. Oh, what's that show? That's Rockin' and Rappin'. Rockin' and Rap. Anyway, I used to be all about nonfiction because Flizzo had mentioned that he likes to read one fiction and then a nonfiction to even it out. And so I used to be all about nonfiction, thinking that if it wasn't real, why would it matter? And this also touches on why you would read a book twice, because it's not all about remembering facts. Reading a book can make you feel something, and reliving an experience at a different time in your life can be valuable. Ernest Hemingway, who was born 1899, served as an ambulance driver in Italy during World War I. And Farewell to Arms is based on his experience. So is that book a fiction or nonfiction? Have you read it yet, Flizzo? Or touched it?
I've not read it yet, no.
Alex read a little of The Old Man and the Sea. That's a bit of Hemingway.
Boring way.
But so what do you think?
You can have a fiction book that mixes a lot of nonfiction elements in it, where it's good enough to almost be a nonfiction book, but they might do it from the perspective of a different character, saying it as themselves. So I think there's some pretty good fiction books that are based on nonfiction, real occurrences. So.
Yeah, you see it a lot, especially because I like Napoleon and Russian literature. They'll be about nonfiction characters, real people, and it'll cover a real event, but we don't actually know what the Tsar of Russia was saying in these backdoor conversations. So it becomes a flowery conversation.
Nonfiction makes me think of that one veteran guy. I think his documentary is Morrowind or something like that. He got brain injury and he plays with dolls that, like, he also recreates his own past army experiences. Steve Carell made a movie about that guy after a documentary about him.
But so what about that?
But like, he's a real person, he has real issues, and he like relives his PTSD by acting out in a town of Barbie dolls that he does himself. So it's fiction, nonfiction.
But is that any different than Ernest Hemingway writing about his experience? He's just playing it out with letters on a typewriter in his head. He's creating the
but I feel
characters
like
rather
because
than
he's a
holding
writer,
dolls.
it becomes more extravagant and less real.
I think he wants to be extravagant as a person. He is, and you'll see in Farewell to Arms. And I talked to my real life lieutenant about how after reading Farewell to Arms, we had both developed a love for vermouth because he stays in the hospital and he sneaks bottles of vermouth in. And I didn't know you could drink vermouth, but I guess in Italy it is. No, I think it's just a sweet wine, I think. And so
dry.
if you read Farewell to Arms, no, I think they're sweet and dry.
Wait, there is, but like
he depicts vermouth in such beautiful language. Like, my mouth is watering for vermouth.
Yeah, but like, haven't you heard like I don't know how like I'm just like ad-libbing here, but the best martini is drinking a glass of gin while staring at a bottle of vermouth. Like, so like you don't even put the vermouth in it because no one likes
drink
vermouth.
The vermouth. Yeah, I could get that, but that's a different age. That's because Hemingway was born over 100 years ago.
Yeah, so they had no taste.
Vermouth is out of style, but we're bringing it back now.
I think we got to get Chris some Malort.
Malort?
Is that like Detroit or Chicago, something like that? It's like a horrible liqueur.
All right, I've never heard of it.
Yeah, I'm going to read Shakespeare. So what I've got now, we've got Puck's monologue. Alex had mentioned Puck in a previous episode with Gargoyles, had Puck in it. And this is...
Wasn't he a delivery driver in the real world? Oh, different Puck. Never mind.
Oh.
A Midsummer Night's Dream. This is Act 2, Scene 1. And what I like, a lot of people like Midsummer Night's Dream because it has a lot of rhyming, which I think people expect out of Shakespeare. And it's got fairies, which people go cocoa nuts over fairies. This is Puck. Thou speakest aright. I am that merry wanderer of the night. I jest to Oberon and make him smile, when I a fat and bean-fed horse beguile, neighing in likeness of a filly fowl, and sometime lurk I in a gossip's bowel, in very likeness of a roasted crab, and when she drinks against her lips I bob, and on her withered dewlap pour the ale, the wisest ant telling the saddest tale. Sometime for 3-foot stool mistaketh me, then slip I from her bum, down topples she, and Taylor cries and falls into a cough, and then the whole choir holds their hips and loff, and waxen in their mirth and knees, and swear a merrier hour was never wasted there. But room for fairies. Here comes Oberon. Now, Oberon is king of the fairies. So you don't want to be having this sort of conversation. Did you hear what he said about the she topples down?
When he's drunk and falling over?
Yeah. And the bums, yeah.
Does he mean butts?
So what do you think of Puck and fairies?
I mean, Puck is always portrayed as
moving
so many people like.
What's that?
Puck is always portrayed as like the fairy that everyone likes, even though he's like the Loki of fairies.
He's a whimsical character.
Isn't Loki? I had been saying Loki is now the most popular MCU character.
Yeah,
what do you think of that statement? Who is
in the current generation, or just overall?
Yeah. Well, now that Iron Man, Thor, Captain America have retired. Who would be Marvel's front runner?
Yeah,
Not who they want it to be. Who the people when they've spoken.
I don't know. I mean,
right. I think Loki has the best shot at being the most popular. A few of them the stories are a mess, and the characters aren't very well derived.
Yeah, they've been getting off the wall. I've heard about this Fallout show, and it made me get the opinion that video games, since the AAA titles have become so expensive to make and mobile games are the most profitable, that video games should pivot mostly into TV shows and movies because they have all these original IPs that have fully fleshed out worlds, or at least have been fleshed out for 20 years in like Fallout's case.
Well, when they're making a video game that's like a long story, it's almost like making a TV show because you got to make it go on for hours and hours with all this content so people can actually engage with it and actually want to play the game. So it has to be an engaging story, it has to be a long story, and it has to have really likable characters or good villains, or else it's going to be terrible. Like, because people spend so much time working in that video game environment that they're gonna realize when, like, hey, this character's motivation sucks, it doesn't make any sense, or this person's dialogue is
So
horrible. So they
beyond all
they
the
have to be on
story
their A game.
stuff is the video game stuff, though. So it's like you need to do the graphics, which now that graphics have gotten better and better, takes longer and longer, and then it has to be it has to feel fun to play.
Yeah, but
So
we're
it's just so much has to come in line. Where if they just do like Fallout does TV instead of games, I think that makes sense.
we're in such an era of going back to 8-bit or 32-bit and
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So like I don't know about graphics anymore. I think people
Well,
kind of care more about gameplay. But most games, if you really just like batten down, aren't as long as you think they are. Like, and it's kind of a shame,
No,
especially newer games are just like 10 hours and you're
they're
like, wow, I just paid
they're really
$70 for this
short.
game.
in the
But
age
then
of
you look back at like the
DLC,
the Metal Gear Solid game like series. Those games are ridiculously long and very complicated stories, and people love them.
What was it? Spider-Man 2, I think I beat in 100% beat in 16 hours. And
oh
it's like,
wow,
well, that game's not that big, but like that game came out and it
that's
was
not the
$70. Like,
yeah.
but
I mean, the price tag for video games. And that's why I think another reason for the 8-bit and indie thing happening is because you can get a game for $20 or even like, I don't know, 60 cents for you could still get a good game if you catch a good sale. I don't have any Bible reading this week, but last week we were talking about Abraham and his son Isaac, and Abraham answers his son saying, "Here am I." And that's very specific wording, and this is why we're staying sharp. We need to be able to pick up on wording, and that "Here am I" is meant to contrast that God is the I am, and in the Bible, God will be called, and he'll say, "I am." And that made me want to talk about Rene Descartes. This is his first meditations, where he famously said, "Cogito ergo sum," which is Latin we generally accept to mean "I think, therefore I am." And we could walk through those words, like cogito being cognition, thinking, ergo, therefore, and sum, the total. God is the total. God is the I am. And the reason I want to talk about this was because, well, Descartes is a great philosopher, one of our best, I'd say. Some might even say he invented science in his way of doing things. And we can talk about his thought experiment that led him to "I think, therefore I am." I have a little bit of Descartes prepared to read. Anyway, all I want to say is that humans, the philosophers, never came up with something shorter and simpler, short and sweet, better than God did with the "I am." And so here I'm going to read a little Descartes from his first meditations. "But now, having begun to have a better knowledge of myself and the author of my origin, I am of the opinion that I must not rashly admit everything that I seem to derive from the senses. But neither, for that matter, should I call everything into doubt. First, I know that all things that I clearly and distinctly understand can be made by God such as I understand them." End of reading. I don't know if I said that Descartes was 1600s French philosopher. So did you want to hear about his thought experiment, why he went down that path to begin with? He was thinking, what if all of my senses were just a trick from the devil? How could I know anything? And so this is where he's the father of science, because how can I know anything? So he has to produce a way of doing that. So he starts, well, if my thoughts could be a trick, if this could be a trick. So, and then his end statement is, I know that if I am thinking, then I exist. That is one thing I can say for sure.
yeah, but what is existing if you're not
So,
sure who you
how do you
are?
think? How do you think he would feel about the
Who are
simulation
we?
theory then?
I think that we get to that theory from him, because that's basically what the simulation theory is. His version is just if the simulation is made by the devil.
Yeah, but how does he
right?
know he's not the devil?
Ooh, I don't know if he investigated that one. How does he know he's not the? I don't know, because he's not evil, or he
Yeah,
loves God, believes
but
in
if you were
God.
the devil trying to trick people into like doing bad things for you, you could convince them that they aren't you doing the bad things. So like, Descartes could have just been the devil and been too smart for his own good and not known it.
I'm not following that
Yeah,
one.
no, I don't
But
know. This
So
is
you're saying
not really. But that does make me think about like man in general, and that is the fall of mankind, is biting from the fruit of knowledge of good and evil, or the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That what the snake says, that you will become like God, and that's what humans are after. And when we do that, we open up Pandora's box, and all heck breaks loose when we think we have this knowledge.
so. Is there ever an end point where we do get all of that knowledge?
I mean, some say the second coming of Jesus, all will be revealed, but no one knows when that would be, so I'm not holding my breath. But
Well, I mean, everybody thinks it's going to come in their lifetime. So
yeah.
every civilization since has been like, yeah, here it is.
Yeah, I don't get weighed down on that, and that's why I'd say that like the staying sharp thing is because it's irregardless of that. I don't need all the answers, and also why should we presume that we should get all the answers? So I just continue on toiling the soil.
Well,
literally.
at a certain point, you still want to make progress with everything, especially with your knowledge, right? You don't want to necessarily think you found all the answers, but you still want to search for answers to as many questions as you can.
And I think that is a challenge and a skill in its own, of like, what happens when you achieve your goals? I mean, we'd said before, how do you keep up the hunger pains once you've won the race? So you have to, like, you'll learn that didn't solve everything. It didn't give you this everlasting happiness. That the next day you'll wake up and it'll be a new day. What do you do with it? And so you're still hoping to get that progress, I guess.
I think the reason I conflict with this a lot is because I know in high school someone like gave me some attitude because I said I was content, and they're like, "Oh, but you don't want to be content." It's like, but like, really, you do want to be content. Isn't that the goal? Is to be content with life and enjoy and live rather than always try to be better.
Yeah, but I think their point was like you were content from like the start point. So like, let's say you're playing Super Mario Brothers and the screen just starts and you're like, yeah.
Yeah, why do you need to scroll the screen?
I don't need to get to that first castle.
I got the Koopa. There's 3 blocks.
See, but I'm not seeing why?
But
why look for more when you don't have to?
And going.
Sorry, but
go.
You're saying this perspective from like a high schooler, all right? So if it was like now and you're like, I'm content, I'm like, okay, you've had life experience, you've done some stuff, you made progress. Some progress, it doesn't have to be a lot. But starting it from like 16, 17, 18, you've literally done nothing except for what everybody's told you to do up until that point. So like being content with that seems like I would see somebody getting upset because you haven't done.
You could understand a dishonesty in that because, like Flizzo said, that you're not providing for yourself. So it's like, well, you can't be content because you don't know what the real world is yet. So once you get into the real world, you settle down, then you call it content. But as long as people are still helping you along, you have a responsibility, might be their perspective.
I don't know. It sounds like content and someone just keeps moving the goalpost.
You know, it kind of reminds me of that.
Mine, but I think people are also different.
You know that the Amish thing, the Rumspringa,
Yeah.
where they like kind of let them go out in the world and like, hey,
yeah.
live, see how other people live outside of us, and then come back. And I kind of that kind of came to my head where it's like, hey, you might not know that this is what you want because you haven't experienced other things. So and then they can be like, you know what, I'm content because I've seen other ways of living, how other people live and interact with other people. I'll go back and be content with that. So even in that like really conservative, you know, religious society, they kind of see that you can't just be content with something off the bat at a younger age. So
I'd also
that might not work that way.
I would like to connect this to my history reading. I have Parables of Kierkegaard. Soren Kierkegaard was a 1800s philosopher in Denmark, and a thing I have been meaning to say a note is that you write down notes because it separates thoughts you thought from the real life. And this parable is called The Author Who Could Not Write Fast Enough. So he's going to show up and he's lamenting, he's overwhelmed by fullness of ideas that it was impossible for him to put down anything on paper because he could not write fast enough. So he's thinking, I have so many ideas. I'm this incredible writer, or at least creative genius, but I can't write the things down. So that's why it doesn't work out. But he hasn't experienced the real life. So he finds this person. The character's name is Constantine Constantius in the book Repetition. And there's a little bit of rapping in Kierkegaard. So he's going to be a secretary and write all the things down. He says, my willingness to be of service knew no bounds. I had a big table brought out, numbered many sheets of paper in order that I might not even waste time in turning a page, laid out a dozen steel pens with their holders, dipped my pen, and the man began his address as follows. Well, yes. You see, sir, what I really want to say was, when he was through with the address, I read it out loud to him, and from that time, he has never asked me to be his secretary. Do you see what I was saying with the coming against the real world?
It sounded like there was a part missing out there.
What did you feel was missing?
He thought he was going to be good at being a secretary, and he was terrible.
Well, no. The guy thought he was a good writer, but he was like, oh, but I can't write the things down. So he found somebody who said, I can write the things down. Just tell me what you want to write. And when push came to shove, he had nothing to say.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, all right. So that was like, I felt like you might have cut out or something because nothing was said. I was like, I don't understand.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, it was the way that you said it made it sound like you just skipped a bunch of stuff.
And that is the cleverness of Kierkegaard.
Gotcha. It's different if you read it, I guess.
It's Danish humor.
All I'm thinking about is how so far this is just a bunch of bird sounds. Yeah, and then whatever the other was the C one, you said the double names and the.
Oh, Constantine Constantius.
Yeah, see? It's all just a bunch of birds.
Well, Plato said that
Constantine.
Man is just a featherless biped.
What do we need to be
and
feathers?
Then, of course, Diogenesis brings in a plucked chicken and says, look, it's Plato's man. And we all laugh and make sure to write it down for 2,500 years later. Are you guys not up to speed with this meme? Diogenesis' prank. All right. Well, moving on to something we were talking about on capable. We were talking about being capable instead of dangerous. And how do we distinguish between capable skills and the ability to unlife a person? In one way, it's good when building a society. The other, when defending it. I wanted to make people aware that when it comes to defending against evil, they're not dissuaded from their actions in normal ways. One must rain down fire and brimstone, and good people don't deserve to see what that looks like.
I don't think they can handle what it looks like for the most part. Like, yeah, I think a certain amount of, I guess, negativity that is introduced to certain people, they can't really take it.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of sours their outlook on society and other people. So it would be in everybody's best interest if most of the society is kind of sheltered from that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that is kind of what society is, like the safe place. But in my experience, on both ends of the capable, the evil side and the good, they have a rough upbringing because, like, you were already exposed to this evil, so that's why if you grew up in it, you're not afraid of it. Where if you've never seen it, then you're pure.
Yeah, because it's not going to shock you when you see it if that's all you've ever seen, and it won't change your outlook and how you handle things because you already thought it that way. Like, all right, there's this underlying negativity through people, or this capability that people have to do evil deeds. So you always carry yourself in a sense that that's possible. But if you've never experienced that, then you just, I guess you seem more gullible or something like that because you're like,
Yeah.
Nothing bad could happen in this.
Well, yeah, if you've never seen
place.
it, your worldview doesn't know how bad things could get. I mean, so I wanted to talk about the Jedi shooting lightning, and last week Flizzo said that was the dark side, and I wanted to argue that the Jedi are capable of it, but they refrain from doing it or restrain themselves. Because I also, as you were speaking, I thought that in doing that, we see with the Emperor, there is power when you get to overwhelm someone with that, and somebody might take pleasure in that power, especially someone that's been weak and decrepit for so much of their life.
Yeah. Well, there are cases of a few Jedi that have done it.
Oh.
I know Plo Koon was he was on the council and he was able to use a form of lightning. It wasn't the same as Sidious, but
Dooku
I think
could
he
do it
tapped
before
into like
he
a
went Sith.
So maybe, but like it shows that. Well, and we talked about Mace Windu. It's a dangerous game. Like if you start down that path, but I guess we still call that person capable though? If they've shot with lightning out, are they not dangerous? I also have a comment on the council since I heard that was mentioned.
Yeah, I don't think you would say they're dangerous. I think they're still capable.
Yeah, watch out. That guy might shoot you with lightning.
Because I think there's physical ability and then there's mental ability. And once your mental ability dwindles, then you're more of the dangerous. You know, if you can't control your feelings and thoughts and stuff like that, then you drift into the dangerous sector rather than just the capable. Because I mean, you see it all the time, like somebody who was trained a certain way. I mean, that person was capable, but then, you know, their life falls apart. So their mental state goes down. Now they become dangerous. So I think it's an aspect of your mental and physical.
Yeah.
One of them, or your mental decline, or not declining, but just changing into a negative state.
I always like to put things as a three-pronged stool. Robert Sapolsky said nature, nurture, and chaos, so that dichotomies are probably dangerous for human thinking. So that's why we want to leave a little sliver for chaos or the Holy Spirit. But it's never just the mental or just the physical. There's also the extra.
Yeah, because
that's all.
Yeah, there's people that their life falls apart and they hold it together.
Yeah.
Surprisingly well. You're like, all right.
And that's like, I mean, a lot of this whole like podcast writing thing is to like figure out like what is different about these people. Something like Farewell to Arms. It's what separates the people that get wounded and rush back to the front lines and the person that gets wounded and picks up a vermouth addiction.
Well, I think it's kind of back to what we were saying earlier of once you have that goal, and let's say you achieve that goal, and then you don't seek anything else. So if let's say your goal was to, I don't know, achieve a certain rank or whatever, and you get that rank, and then there's nothing else for you. And then other things around you start going bad, and then then you don't have a purpose anymore, essentially. So you're like, I think that makes a person lost. So that I think once a person gets lost, then that's when they could fall down that dangerous path, because they don't know where they're going.
You would especially look to take on supplemental things to get you where you want to be, but you don't know where you want to be, so you're taking on anything, and then you just get more confused.
And then you're like, something sparks something, and you're like, you see something on TV, and you're like, I hate that. And then my new goal is now to get rid of that.
Yeah.
Which might be a negative thing.
So, Flizzo, do you think that the Jedi Council should have given Anakin the title of Master?
No.
So, do you think he should have been on the council? How can you be on the council and not be a master? The point of the council is it's a council of masters.
He's absolutely right. He shouldn't have been on the council. He should have done more training, or he should have been, I guess, more of a wayfinder or something like that, a way seeker. Because clearly they only wanted him on the council because he was close to Palpatine. So they were using him in that sense. So they wanted to keep eyes on Palpatine by keeping eyes on him. I
believe there was some mention, maybe it was Padme, but there was mention of he has a close relationship with somebody else, so that could be useful. So yeah, they were playing politics. So
they weren't looking out for his interests at all. They were just using him as a tool, which, I
also
added
think
to him seeing how the Council and the Jedi were not such the sparkling good guys they portrayed themselves to be.
I think that Anakin should have spent time apprenticing under a different Jedi, because, like we talked about, the emotional state, training with Obi-Wan is too close to home. He should have had someone else.
Yeah, because Obi-Wan felt like he had to do it because Qui-Gon kind of made him.
And they'll always be remembering Qui-Gon. And, Obi-Wan should have probably taken some time off after Qui-Gon passed as well.
Yeah, but it didn't seem like the Jedi cared about mental health.
Yeah.
Why'd they promote Obi-Wan to master? He never finished his apprenticeship. His master died.
Oh, yeah.
No, he did.
When?
Well, they probably
died, and
said
then he was
that
like, you're master now.
After he beat Darth Maul, it was like, well, obviously you've proven yourself. Maybe.
Yeah, he passed the trials already.
When, though? Because, he came back and went, I'll raise this boy. And, he still had his rat tail.
His Padawan brain? Yeah. No, he passed the trials before they got sent off to the mission for the
talking about the trade. Wow.
Last thing I have planned for the night is the math. Did you guys end up solving it on your own? For the listeners, the numbers are 2, 2, 1, and 7.
Got it.
Wait, what do you got?
7 plus 1.
7 minus 1
is 8
times 2 times 2.
6. Ah, yeah.
I need to write it down. I don't have scratch paper.
All right. Well, anything else? We've reached the conclusion of our 10th episode.
Hey, got some bees.
Here's drink to the bees. The bees meads.
Wow.
To follow Alex on Google Maps and all social media under the name CU3 Scott, and my webpage, drawingmylifeaway.com. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a nice day. Goodbye.
Adios.
Goose.